There are people who cry over sports,
What are you doing?
people who
Pass the ball?
scream at
No.
televisions, people who feel genuine, burning hatred towards strangers wearing the wrong jersey. And from the outside, it looks completely irrational until you understand what sports actually do to the human brain. Because this isn't about athletics. This isn't about competition. This is about something so ancient, so deeply wired into who we are, that even the most logical person on Earth gets pulled into it without ever understanding why. And once you see it clearly, you'll never look at a sports fan the same way again. 40,000 years ago, humans didn't survive alone. You needed a tribe. People who knew your name, protected your life, shared your fire. Being excluded wasn't embarrassing. It was a death sentence. So the human brain evolved one of its most powerful powers, the desperate, almost physical need to belong somewhere. And here's where it gets interesting. That drive never left. It just found new places to live. And one of the most powerful places it found? Sports. Think about what a sports team actually is. A group of people wearing the same colors, fighting the same enemy, competing for the same goal. That's not entertainment. That's a tribe. And your ancient brain doesn't know the difference between a football stadium and a battlefield. It just knows these are my people, and those are not. That emotional reaction is not accidental. You're feeling something 40,000 years old every single Sunday afternoon.
But tribal instinct alone doesn't explain the obsession, because there's something happening chemically that most people never talk about. When a sports fan sits down to watch their team, their brain starts releasing dopamine, the chemical of anticipation, reward, and craving. But here's what most people get wrong about dopamine. It's not released when you win. It's released while you're waiting to find out. That uncertainty is what floods your brain. And sports is built entirely around uncertainty. You don't know if they'll score. You don't know if the comeback is coming. Every single moment is a dopamine trigger. Neuroscientists call this intermittent reinforcement, the most addictive reward system the human brain responds to. The same mechanism behind gambling, behind slot machines, behind social media. The unpredictability is the addiction. fMRI brain scans show that watching your team activates the exact same reward circuits as other highly compelling compulsive behaviors. The brain isn't watching a game. The brain is chasing a feeling. And most fans have absolutely no idea it's happening. Now here's where psychology explains everything. Dopamine explains why people watch, but it doesn't explain why people care this deeply. Why would a grown adult feel physically sick when their team loses? The answer is identity. Somewhere along the way, sports fans stop seeing their team as something they watch. They start seeing it as something they are. Psychologists call this identity fusion. The boundary between me and my team becomes genuinely blurred. Their wins feel like your wins. Their losses feel like your failures. And this is not metaphorical. This is neurological. And suddenly, a stranger becomes family. For millions of people, lonely people, disconnected people, people who feel invisible in daily life, sports is the only place they reliably feel that belonging. The only place they don't have to explain themselves. For some people, sports isn't entertainment. It's the 1 hour of the week where they feel completely human. Here's a concept that will change how you see sports fans forever. Psychologists call it burging, basking in reflected glory. It's why fans say we won, but they lost. Notice that pronoun shift. When the team succeeds, it's shared identity. When they fail, it's distance. Because the brain is constantly protecting self-esteem. A win deposits into your sense of worth. A loss threatens it. So the brain creates automatic distance during failure to protect your ego. This isn't weakness.
Studies show that when a fan's team wins, testosterone levels rise, the same biological response as if they personally competed and won.
When their team loses, cortisol spikes. The body registers it as a genuine personal defeat. Your brain doesn't care whether the threat is real. It just responds. And this is where sports obsession becomes dangerous, because you've handed your emotional well-being to something you have zero control over. 11 strangers are now responsible for whether you feel good about yourself this weekend. That's a fragile place to live. But let's pause, because there's something genuinely beautiful happening too. When people gather to watch sports, their brains release oxytocin, the bonding hormone, the same chemical released when you hug someone you love. Oxytocin doesn't care that you've never spoken to the person next to you. It just knows you're both wearing the same colors, feeling the same hope, surviving the same tension together. This is the brain doing exactly what it was designed to do. But here's the deeper truth. People who need their team to win to feel okay about themselves are often quietly struggling with something underneath. A sense of inadequacy, a need for external validation, a life that doesn't give them enough genuine pride. Sports becomes the borrowed confidence. And that works, until it doesn't. Now, what about people who feel absolutely nothing towards sports? Not people who prefer other things, people who genuinely feel zero when a stadium erupts. Are they missing something? Psychology says no. Research suggests that variations in dopamine receptor genes, the actual biology of how your brain processes reward, can predict how strongly someone responds to competitive spectator experiences. Your complete indifference to whether the Lakers win tonight might literally be in your DNA. People who don't respond to sports don't have a reward deficiency. They have different reward allocation. Studies show they score significantly higher in intellectual curiosity, openness to experience, and aesthetic sensitivity. Their dopamine fires through ideas, art, conversation, creative challenges. Same human need for meaning? Completely different delivery system. Neither is wrong, just two different answers to the same ancient question. Where do I feel most alive? But here's the part nobody says out loud. For some people, sports obsession stops being joy and becomes something else entirely. When emotional stability depends completely on a team's performance, when relationships suffer, when work suffers, when an entire week's mood is decided by a final score, something has shifted. What started as belonging has become a coping mechanism. And like all coping mechanisms, when it's the only tool you have, it costs more than it gives. Psychologists have documented real post-game depression after major losses, anxiety mirroring clinical symptoms, because the brain was never designed to process tribal defeat and immediately return to normal life. The grief is real, but the stakes are borrowed. And that gap between the size of the feeling and the size of the actual event is where obsession quietly becomes suffering. So what does all of this tell us? It tells us humans have never really changed. We still need tribes. We still need ritual. We still need something larger than ourselves to belong to. Sports didn't create that need. It just learned how to feed it. And for millions of people searching for identity in a world that moves too fast, sports gives them something real. Community, meaning, story, the feeling that something matters. Underneath every painted face and every screaming fan, there's just a human being who desperately wants to belong somewhere, to feel something real. And if you've ever felt that in any area of your life, then you already understand sports psychology better than any textbook will ever teach you. We're all just playing different versions of the same game, trying to find the tribe that makes us feel whole. And here is what nobody ever stops to ask. What happens to a person when that tribe disappears, when the season ends, when the team relocates, when the player they built their identity around retires? For some fans, that moment feels like genuine loss. Not because they're dramatic, not because they're weak,
but because something that was holding a real psychological need suddenly stops existing. The brain doesn't grieve sports. It grieves belonging. And that tells you everything you need to know about why this obsession was never really about sports at all. If this actually hit you, if something in here finally put words to something you always felt, hit that like button, share this with someone who needs to hear it, and subscribe. And drop a comment. If you're obsessed with sports, did this describe you? Did you feel this? I read every single one. I'll meet you in the next video.